session of MUME Matters. So this is a monthly session which we are conducting every second Sunday of the month. This is our third session. We've already spoken about and discussed about the inclusion of queer people in Indian museums. Our last session was a conversation with Vikas Dilaveri, conservation architect. Today we are going to talk to Anthony Lopez and Diptangshu Sanyal. So Anthony is going to lead us through the branding and identity design of the Bihar Museum. And most importantly, we are going to learn from him about how and why branding is required, or why we need to have identity design for museums specific to India. We're going to discuss that. But most importantly, I'd just like to let you know that this session is broken into two parts. First 40 minutes mainly will be a discussion between Anthony and Diptangshu, and the next 40 minutes you'll have to re-log in and you will be free to ask questions. You can message questions in the chat box. And just to give you a context, Museum Memories Project, or the MUME project, was launched last year, 2020 April. It is an attempt to make museums and heritage spaces, mainly museums, accessible and inclusive. How many people, how different audiences can feel free with a museum collection, and it's an attempt to take museums out, museum collections out of a museum building. Because of the lockdown, most of our museums are locked. They're not open to public, and a museum belongs to people. So you can send in your entry, your memories of a museum, to museummemoriesproject@gmail.com. And please feel free to follow us on Instagram. We have a website and we are also on YouTube. Thank you so much. So a very hearty welcome to Anthony. And it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for taking out time. And thank you, Diptangshu. Diptangshu and Ashwini Parihar were the two designers who made the brand behind Museum Memories Project. And Anthony is the founder and the creative lead director for Lopez Design. So thank you, Anthony, for taking our time. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this. Yes, Anthony and Diptangshu.
Is my voice, is it loud and clear?
Yeah. Yes.
Hello, is it me? Yeah. So thank you, Palomi, and I hope, in spite of technical glitches, that we could have a fruitful conversation, and especially for our audience. I can see a very wide range of audience here, right from William Wong to Anjani Kumarji, who's been our client on the project. And so I think that's a fantastic opportunity for us to discuss and probably also bring certain aspects of museum branding to the foray, right? In that sense, and the challenges we face, or museums face, in context to branding. So over to you, Diptangshu, to lead the way with your questions.
I'm sorry if I might interrupt. Thank you so much, Anjani Kumarji. Anjani Kumar Singh has been the Chief Secretary of Bihar, and he has been the nodal officer for the Bihar Museum project. He's the main reason probably all of us could get together and create the Bihar Museum. If you haven't seen it, do make a point to go and visit it as soon as it's open. It's located in Patna. And thank you so much, Anjani ji, for being a part of this. Thank you. Yes, Diptangshu, thank you.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for this opportunity. So I'll start straight by asking, since we have a wide variety of Not everyone is accustomed to the idea of branding. So I'd like to start by asking you, uh, what is branding, and uh, so how you can explain the branding in the simplest form, and also as you explain, point out the components of uh, various components of identity design project as well.
Um, I think branding very briefly, in a simple way, would mean opinions which people form about you in their minds, right? And these people could be your potential customers, your existing customers, or whoever basically would come across you as a person or a brand, right? So it's as simple as you and me. Is about how we build reputation over time, right? And if we do this in a systematic manner with a clear goal in mind, then that's definitely that's branding, right? Very simply put. And I think everybody does that in different ways. And when you go to a larger scale, say in the scale of Bihar Museum, then you need to do it uh, uh, in a so-called near to perfect manner in terms of how you go about doing it, right? Yeah.
So when you talk about identity design project, especially in the context of a museum, so how is it different from a context of a commercial venture or a firm?
For me personally, I don't see difference between branding a entity or a B entity, right? In that sense, because every entity would have its own characteristics of being unique in itself. In the case of museums, basically, it's a different plane altogether in context to why they are set up and why they come into place. And thereby, the premise on which you would brand it would be very different from, say, branding a product or a service, right, at the other end. And one of the main components which basically, say, an institution or a museum would have is that it would have a large body of collection attached to it, or a story or history, and something which it wants to bring to the foray. So that itself is very good, material to work with in context to creating a brand out of it, versus basically a product or a service where you would try and largely see differentiators in place to be able to bring out a particular brand or a product in that sense. So I think the opportunities are far exciting when you do a cultural or a social or a institutional project. Yeah, like a museum.
So diving into the
If I, sorry to interrupt, Diptangsha, if I may ask you, Anthony, when you were saying that the collections of a museum, a lot of us who work for or in the museum field, we are sometimes very scared of hiring a branding firm because we are sometimes scared that the collection might not get the highlight, and it'll be about some jazzy colors and something. Don't get offended by what I'm saying, but that's how most of us think, and a lot of times we've noticed it's about a museum shop or a cafe that gets more importance after a branding project and not the collection. Do you think that is not because that's what branding means, or is it because sometimes the project hasn't been done with total honesty, or the collection was not considered good enough? Is there something like that?
No, I think most of the time when uh, so-called say an institution is built around a collection or around knowledge or whatever it could be, which is gathered and brought in forward. It is done by scholars and experts, right? And these scholars and experts are normally very good at what they do, and they're a purist. They are in love with the subject. They know it very deep, and that's what they know best, right? And they want to lay it bare for the people. in that sense. And of course, they have a certain point of view towards the collection, and that's what they write about, or that's how they they steer the entire narrative in context to that, and they think that's enough, right? And then if anything else is basically artificial and unpure, right? In that sense, this is again my interpretation. I don't think every scholar is like that, or every expert or every body which comes into place to form such institutions would think like that necessarily. But a large group of experts would be very focused about the subject matter, and for them everything else doesn't matter at all. Yes, we have to share this with the larger public. Yes, we require all the we need to showcase it and tell the story to people, but that's for the people to get interested themselves, right? And come to an institution like this. So that is something which I think largely I think the fault doesn't lie with them. uh, but I think the thing is that one needs to know as society the potential of, and 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 the reason why we should do it in the first place, why it's important for people to know it, and as many people to know it, right? And why that becomes our task as an institution which has come together, right? And let people learn about the collection, and you share it to as many people as possible. I think that's the core purpose of putting things together. Yeah.
So you feel that a branding project, if done well, actually helps a museum become more accessible and more welcoming, and reaches out to a wider section of people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, yeah, if Anjani could speak also, he could tell about his experience about what transformation has happened, right? In context to, so in this case, particularly Bihar Museum, I mean, they wanted to bring back the glory of Bihar, undoubtedly, right? And they wanted to use this medium as one of the channels to bring back the glory of Bihar, in terms of and I think in a lot of ways, because of the way they went about it. So branding is not in isolation. It's not about a logo. Definitely not. And logo is just a little pretty thing which we do, which is the source of the story, right? And everything. But there is a lot of deeper things. So the entire architecture, the building, the structure, everything else around it, all those things add to the so-called brand story, and one can use the bigger word there is basically the strategy, right? And then of course you go down to the brand strategy in terms of how do you tell this story to people, right? And how do you carve out your niche space in the minds of people, right? So that's where it is. And I think it definitely makes a difference, and especially although branding is seen both as a negative word and as a positive word, because people have misused branding, and I can talk about it later also how. But it is something in today's time is a must. It cannot happen automatically at the scale at which you would want to happen. Say, so like a Bihar Museum would like to influence the rest of India, the world, the entire Southeast Asian region, right? So how it cannot do that just by sitting there and saying and not saying anything, right? So you got to say something, and then it got to spread its wing. And so how does it lie in the minds of people? And when it lies in the mind of people and it attracts it, then they start saying, okay, I want to come there. It's like the Taj Mahal. Everybody wants to see the Taj Mahal everywhere in the world. Okay. And thereby they get to know the story. They get to know all those things. Now Taj Mahal is an extremely powerful story. It doesn't need to brand itself. It's already powerful. But an entity like the Bihar Museum will need to start branding it and spread the message far and wide as much as possible. And then it will bring in people inside.
Anjani ji, if you would like to comment, we would be more than happy, would be honored. You're most welcome to. Sir, you're on mute, sorry.
Still on mute.
Yes, sir, I am muted.
Now okay?
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good evening, Ji.
Good evening.
Yeah.
So muted.
This
Yes, sir.
importance of that Anthony is describing, when we were making Bihar Museum, we realized that we are doing this international level museum, and people of Bihar, India, and out of India, outside India, all should know about the rich history of Bihar and India, because that was the pride that Anthony was discussing just now. We wanted that we have a very glorious history. We have lot many archaeological sites. We have Nalanda, Vikramshila. We had great empire of Nandas, Chandragupta, Maurya, etc. So those things were to be showcased. But okay, so that is good for people of Bihar. But once you brand it at national and international level, it gets that fame. And we were very happy that we employed this agency, and Anthony did a tremendous work, and that gave a visibility to our museum at national and international level. Of course, we did many things, but there was a great support from Indian institutions outside. Anybody related to museum, they know us because the branding was in the core, and we wanted to take our strength to people interested in museums, archaeology, culture, history, etc. So branding played a very important role in Bihar Museum. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ji.
So that gives a lot of satisfaction, I'm sure, Anthony, when your client, and such an important client as the Bihar Museum, the Bihar state government, considers the work done by your firm with your wonderful team to do justice to the entire effort behind the museum, right? And not,
absolutely.
I mean, that's
I think again here we treat institutions like these, but actually it's not the institution. It is the people behind the institution. It's the leadership, right? And here, I mean, look at Anjani ji. I mean, he comes into a forum like this and he supports us and he talks about it, right? I mean, that speaks far and wide about a person like he is. And without him, this we would not have been here. Probably it could have been something else, right? And it's not about Lopez Design or somebody else. It is about any studio which is wanting to do something, probably with total earnest for benefiting the museum. I mean, and especially from a bureaucracy perspective, you need to have really tall leaderships to support you on and on ideas which require somebody to say yes to. Otherwise, there's always a compromise on diluting your proposition, on diluting your messaging, just to be safe, right? And here there was absolutely no question about diluting messages or being absolutely sharp and clear about how we position the museum and all those things, right? And I remember quoting Tolstoy, Leo Tolstoy, where basically he talks about history would have been a wonderful thing if it were only true, and that's when I addressed Anjani ji himself and saying, can we open up the museum to be an interpretive space rather than a museum which dictates the story, right? So this is our story. Please tell me what you think about this, and what is your story? What is your interpretation? And I said, we could create a unique institution, which allows stories to be formed through its people, right? And I think that was a wonderful thing for anybody to support, right? Especially coming from experts and historians and all those people who would have one singular way.
Exactly. And when because I was a consultant for Lord Cultural Resources for the exhibition, the research curation. So I was leading the research and curation team, and we were told at every stage the same thing, that the story of Bihar through the artifacts, through the collections, needs to be conveyed to a larger group of people. So like you mentioned, you have your branding strategy and all. That's what something Deeptangshu was also interested to know. So Deeptangshu is a communication designer, and he's also teaching, and apart from being an illustrator and comic artist, when the Museum Memories project was being branded by them, I frankly speaking didn't understand much about it. I just knew it's an oral history project. Like you said, oral history project, people will send memories, that's it. And then Diptanshu would, I'm sure, elaborate more, and we'll come to you for I am the Bihar Museum, the tagline.
Yeah.
So,
I've got the book with
Yes,
me.
beautiful.
so about Museum Memories project, we were quite a small group of small team, but very when we got to know the about the intent of the project, so it was a there was a core to it that uh, especially at that point of time, the lockdown after COVID, a lot of people, Pauline told us, she was in contact with many people who were quite isolated because of this sudden lockdown, and many of them were even feeling frustrated, depressed. So at that point, her main concern was to share a certain happy memory of a place which is someone else's, but it instills a certain positivity in people who are looking at it, reading it, or even hearing it. So that's how the sharing of memories of people who visited a museum started. And when all of the team sat together to discuss, so access was something which came out as a very crucial part of the project, that how to make this heritage, the whole heritage thing available to all the people, especially. And it made sense because of the, it made a lot more sense in COVID lockdown, because even museums were closed and you can't go anywhere. So
Yes.
that's how it began. And later, as for the branding, we did a small exercise where all of us were asked to go through the memories that were already published. So, and then we had to come up with keywords, what each one of these memories make us feel. So it was a quick exercise, and we came up with quite a few words: multilingual, human connection, and people's perspective. Even bold and cheerful was like a thing, because we wanted to keep it fresh. Not we were running away from this whole idea of creating a boring informational thing. So then we came up with we were thinking of names. That the next thing was, what should be the name of the brand, because Museum Memories project, people know it already, but wanted to make it a little shorter, easy to recall. And then uh, we stuck with the name MUME, which is a short form of Museum and Memories. So and we chose MUME for various reasons, because it had no inherent meaning in it. And I mean, we searched, and there was no inherent meaning to the word. And plus, it's small, easy to remember. It also nicknames our larger name of the project. And we were also thinking of future possibilities of like MUME Matters is one of the things that we're doing now. So that way, the word MUME gave a flexibility that we can add a suffix of and create newer avenues out of it.
Even for the color and the
Yeah.
typeface and everything.
Yeah. So access was all the time our core thing there. And for color, since you mentioned, specifically, we were using, I think, Adobe. It was an Adobe thing, feature on their website, that while choosing colors, to keep the colors safe for people who are color impaired, or partially they have color deficiencies. So this came out because during one of our discussions, Ashwini was sharing a lot of color palettes, and I had trouble distinguishing certain colors, because I am myself color deficient with red and green. I have a lot of trouble with red and green. So that was also like a voila moment for us. Okay, one of our own team members has that problem, so we need to be extra careful. And so that's how sure. So And then, shall I present some of our things? I think that will be nice for everyone to see.
If you could, please do.
Just
to
second.
tell you, we have less than 8 minutes on this session.
Okay, just a second.
We're going to hit a timeout button.
I think I need sharing permissions on my other, the one that has just a picture.
Okay. Is it possible? Did you get it?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. I think this is visible.
Yeah.
So, as I was talking, so this is where the part where I mentioned about the name, how we chose the name, and the whole screen is invisible. Yeah. And so we were also inspired for the name by how the Metropolitan Museum nicknamed themselves as the Met. So these were a few explorations on attributes that we chose. We had two approaches. One was doing only a word mark. The other was trying out with a picture and the word mark combination. So initial ideas were that because it was so subjective, the whole idea of sharing multiple perspectives, so we were thinking of words like creating a mark which is similar to a signature, which has an organic attribute to it. And then there were certain other explorations of keeping it playful. So all of this, and okay, this is the other combination of image and text. So here the teammates, we explored with speech bubble, as we understood that as a popular symbol of conversation through comics. And then there were some more exploration, but what the final direction that we took was to keep it a word mark, because of this we were thinking that if we in the future when we create a website, people who have reading difficulties, they'll probably use a screen reader, and in that case having an image and a text would be a little problematic than simply having a text which would be easy to read. Even the screen reader would actually read it out easily. So then we went on to explore with different kind of fonts. The italics were quite appealing in the beginning because of its the curves looked quite approachable. And but even in that, we thought that the italics font might also cause problem for readability, in terms of readability. So we stuck with more straight vertical fonts and bolder ones, because
we were not thinking of access in terms of just opening the doors to a physical space, but in terms of digital access. Because
exactly,
when we kept thinking of access, we were thinking of a lot of people with learning difficulties, with visual impairments, with hearing impairments. If you're sitting at home or wherever you are, your internet connection also might not be good. So we don't want too heavy images on a website or any other platform. So that was also a very big impetus. Yes, Diptansh.
Yeah. No, I think it's very well explored and thought through. Yeah. So I think now you got to scale up.
Yeah, we would love to. We would love to. We would.
So this is the final
yes,
thing that we locked on. The color palette is here. So it had two colors which are all the colors mostly neutrals, but the difference is good enough for not causing any problems. So that was the thing that we did.
So have you been asked something like this in any of your cultural institution or museum projects, Anthony? Like in terms of creation of the color scheme or the story, have you been told or approached for some
No, I think in
access?
context to accessibility, right?
Yes.
So I think when we were doing the Bihar Museum, it was part of what we wanted to address in that sense, but not to the intensity at what we are doing today, right? So today, I think it is the a very critical component of addressing accessibility in
Hmm.
everything what we do. So it has become it's a major thing which we address nowadays. The in the Yeah, this was only about 5 years back, right? uh, we would consider it, but would not say that it should be accessible, right?
But have you
So
ever
that's
been
the difference. Yeah.
approached by a corporate or any cultural institution till now in India to look at these kind
No,
of, not yet,
no, no, not
not
yet. But
yet.
in our projects nowadays, especially when we do digital projects, then they all need to have accessibility as a component, right? Both
So do
apps versus
you stress upon that? Do you educate the client sometimes?
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, when they bring in somebody like us, quote unquote experts, then we have to do it.
Right.
I don't think it may come as a client requirement. So any well-informed institution would be aware of it, right? That they need to be accessible in every perspective. While even if they're not, then we should make sure that that component is a very major is an equal component to everything else in context to yeah, even if it's a minority. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah.
Thank you. The session is going to soon end. Please, for everyone, Anthony and Deepanshu, you log in with the same link. It will work. And
Sure.
so in the
Okay.
next session, you can type in the audience, type in your questions. We would love to address them. And Anthony is going to talk to us more about I Am the Bihar Museum. Could you just show the
Yeah, this book,
brochure?
I think this is very interesting, and the person who's basically worked on it is also part of this forum currently. She's here, Sujata Shankar Kumar. So probably if you give access to her, then she could talk about it. But I
Yes,
think there's a
definitely.
wonderful story behind why we did something like that. It started as a behavior book. So this is a behavior book, right? And so part of branding processes also, we also work on behavior books. No? Yeah. And so
Can you
in
hold
the
it
next
up?
session, we could talk the identity system for the Bihar Museum. We took upon ourselves to do it the way the museum would require it in that sense, right? So we went about, of course, doing the research, study, etc., and I brought in a set of really great people. I mean, Sujata, Jonak, and lots of my team members onto working on this, right? And we really challenged ourselves to do something absolutely authentic and true for Bihar Museum because uh, it inherited a fantastic story. And I said, we got to do justice for this, right? And then make it stand out. And so, of course, we did everything, a strategy which worked out very well for itself, an identity which worked out an entire visual system, etc. And we struggled on a lot of things because we wanted to create something unique. And we had to break a lot of norms, something which
Right,
the
right.
Western ideology or the way we are taught to do identities and the way we are taught to do branding and things like that. So we break a lot of these norms. But when it came to, and we thought, let's do a behavior book because I think it's very critical for a institution which is very contemporary, modern, coming up in the middle of Patna, and it would really shake the whole landscape in many ways, which did, right? It's an institution which is looking very
Yes,
different from the entire landscape.
yes.
And he said, but how do we make the entire people who run the institution behave in a certain manner? So we got to create a behavior book, right? And we found it very challenging to say that how can you make people behave in a certain way just because you write instructions on how to behave, right? And we found that to be a hopeless task in our heads and saying that you cannot do something like that, right? And then we came up, and Susie and I were in this challenging discussions about how to do it this way, this way, this way. And then we together we came up with this idea about saying, why can't we just write a prose, And I left Susie to it, Sujata, sorry, Shankar Kumar. And next day morning, she writes this prose, right? And probably it was written in one go and delivered in one go with absolutely no changes, very small changes, here and there. And it looks like this, right? So it has got pages of just text, and it's in prose. And I'm going to read just one page, and probably if Susie has the book with her, she can read the second last or the last one, right? So it says, I connect with each individual at his or her level. A child will find me playful. A historian will find treasures in my archives. A visitor will be excited to learn about the stupendous glory of this region. A mother will be able to teach her children the fantastic stories of kings, crafty counselors, and spiritual men who made their journey in this land. Susie, do you have the book with you?
No, I don't have the book with me.
Okay. then I'll read how it ends.
You read my part 16, also.
It got 16, 17 pages, and we have about 6-7 people who had come for this meeting along. And it's a room full of people, about 50, 60 people along with Anjani ji there. And I stood up and I read this first page, and each one of us stood up and read the subsequent pages, right? And the whole thing ends up with, I hold as much of the past together that can be found. It is not all of it, but it is for you to decipher, to fill in the blanks, to find Bihar, to find yourself, right? And when my colleagues were reading it, I could see the reaction of all these people in the room who knew Bihar very well, who most of them were Biharis, a lot of them were Biharis. And I could see that they were, and some of them had goosebumps on their skins, right? Because it was touching them in a very fine way. And that is when I realized that this idea which we came up with of writing in first person and prose would actually impact behavior, would take ownership of, hey, this is my museum. I got to do it, treat people in a certain manner, in this manner. And so we told Anjani ji and his team that before you take any decision, you just read this book and then take a decision, create a program, right? Do anything you want. And I'm still pushing them that, hey, can you give this with a ticket, right? And produce it as cheaply so that people get to know this is what our intent is, right? And this is how the museum speaks to you as a person. And I think that's something we struck really well as when you seek, you find. I just tell everybody that as designers, we really need to be stubborn about finding the right solution, which would be a perfect fit.
Yes.
And there are no formulas for it. Yeah.
No, as we can understand after hearing you talk about the Bihar Museum and your entire team's involvement, I know that, you had an entire team working not just on designing, but also on the research, because you mentioned to us once that the logo is multi-layered, So, which is what probably you were saying when you said, you were breaking norms. And it's not just about pleasing the client and giving the client what they want, but it's also at some stage hand-holding them, giving them a larger perspective, which probably they are not in a position to see because they're so much a part of it. And also being very respectful to the needs of the project, and not going down with this idea that, oh, we are designers, so you don't know anything, we'll design this for you. And, like you were mentioning the previous session about some projects that could go wrong. You did give a hint like that about other projects. And in India, as I can say from a museum perspective, most of us think of a branding project as just making the logo. So, and thankfully you put up a lot of this information on your website. So I definitely do share. I know some of us do share your Bihar Museum branding project with people saying that, no, it's not just a logo. You don't stop. You just don't design the logo and stop and step back and then say, oh, my work is over. It's not as easy and simple as that. I think William has a long question. He's saying, how do you design for a history museum that will appeal to young generation visitors, millennials who seem to have attention deficiency? William, a lot of the millennials have actually loved the Bihar Museum. In fact, they are the ones who give a very good feedback. They want to keep going back to it,
So William,
not
yeah, just to answer, yeah. Just to answer that question, William, so we were very much aware of the aspect of that something of the past belongs to the current generation and the future generation. So that's the young people, right? And while we were working and articulating the requirement in terms of how should it fulfill this requirement, we said it should fulfill for what purpose. The purpose would be different stakeholders, right? And one of the biggest stakeholders which we had put out there is youth, and we said, how do we, and youth in context to, and because it's a history and it's a history of India out there.
Yes.
It is your identity, right? And how do you realize your identity when you go through an institution like this, or you get to know about where you come from, historically speaking, right, as a person? And I think that is what we concentrate upon from a branding perspective, that we need to address the youth very powerfully and very meaningfully, because they would not come to search for that identity necessarily, but they would find it in their journey through the museum. And I think that's where it is. And for that, I think we always misunderstand youth in context of doing something flashy and jumpy and things like that, right? I think every subject requires a certain way, a discourse, its narrative, its tone of voice, and all those things. And I think that's very critical. Probably if we were to do it 5 years from now, we would have done it differently, which is now 5 years back, 5 years now. and it a lot, because a lot of it depends on the nature of things as they appear in the sphere of things, right? So currently the ball of the sphere of the isms of graphic design, communication, etc., is constantly moving, right, in different directions.
Yes.
And I think the times always shape the narrative, visual narratives also, right? So and while we were doing the Bihar Museum, we were absolutely challenged by not being influenced by the global narrative, right? And saying that we have to produce our own narrative. We have to do that. And then I see that challenges being taken by you and people of your region also, right? Where you say that, hey, we need to speak our narrative, our style, our this thing. Because, and especially when it comes to cultural and historical perspective, it's not for everything we do that, right? And I think, we took that challenge very seriously. And the challenge about our audience also very serious, because I think it is not about satisfying your client as such, but your client also knows that his purpose is to deliver the task to the larger masses. And I think that is where when that connect happens, then the client is absolutely clear that you are doing the job for his purpose, and his purpose was a larger goal and this thing. You're his and their purpose in that context.
So if I may add to it, I was part of the Bihar Museum project before, Anthony's team came in. And the mission of the museum, the vision of the museum is to restore pride in Bihari history and legacy. So it had a multi-pronged approach, and the Bihar government, it was one of the dream projects of the Bihar government, and they were very meticulous that we stick to it. Even for the research, it was not just pages and pages of research. Like I myself have written around 400-500 panels for the Bihar Museum, but every time we wrote something, every time the graphic panel was designed by the in-house team of Lord Cultural Resources. We had to be very clear as to this is for the people. So the first priority were the local people, school students and college students, and they emphasized on the student part. I'm sure that they kept telling that to Anthony also. Local, people from Patna, people from Bihar, then Indian, and then international. It's not a place where just tourists come and have a cup of coffee and take a selfie and leave. They wanted immersiveness, they wanted people to be involved. So one is, I think it's one of those lifetime opportunities when you have a client like that, you know. I mean,
Yeah,
it's one of the dream
absolutely.
projects in a
Yes.
way, right? So I hope many such projects come for Anthony also, you know. Thank you.
Yes.
Anthony, another
Uh,
question from Akanksha. She wants to know, talk some more about what factors about Bihar as a state were considered while showcasing the identity of Bihar Museum.
so I think it's there is no particular ABC factor as such, but I think all factors, right? First of all, the historical factor was taken into perspective. The collection was taken into perspective. The But I think the most important aspect was the recent history of Bihar, right? Where its entire image and the confidence of the people themselves. That was the challenge, undoubtedly, for us, and that was the main factor. Is about how do you bring back the glory of Bihar, very simply, and how would an institution like this could become the catalyst or the peg or the fulcrum for it, and thereby how every narrative, every story, could be built based on this very premise that our main task is to bring back the glory. But to bring back the glory for whom? It's for the people. It's every Bihari should feel that pride within themselves. And I think for that, we had to experience Bihar. Of course, we did our tours. We lived in Patna. We experienced it. And a lot of us had never been to Patna, in that sense. And all that gave us a very good sense of the reality. The post-independence history, the pre-independence history of Bihar, and its entire deterioration into historically speaking, in terms of what happened to it, and then what happens to the minds of the people in the bargain, right? So I think that is a challenge, and I think it's strategically from the chief minister and the thought leaders like Anjani ji, a fantastic strategy of creating an institution like this or institutions like this. I think not only the only institution, they've created many such institutions, which basically would create these journeys and bring back, and slowly change the entire mindset of people and their own self-confidence. And I think that's where it is heading. Lots more needs to be done. These are just small drops in the ocean from a historical, bringing change in context to history. But I think that if there is a true earnest and an effort and consistency in this effort, it will shape society, because that's what they're shapers of society.
So I'd like to just jump in and say very directly with identity, because she'd asked this question about what factors were considered when we were showcasing the identity. One thing that happened was we had another discussion in another panel like this where people said, how did you come up with this identity, this particular one? What else did you go through? So we had a lot of different possibilities. And like Paulami, like you were saying, we really went all out in terms of the research and everything to come up with very many different identities. And we kept going back to the tree. And the tree was actually also the state symbol of Bihar. Right. So there's a very direct connection in terms of the identity with the tree, which is very central to Bihar. And there's this, they have this whole pride attached to the people, as well as being the tree of knowledge and enlightenment. So this was brought into the entire brand strategy as the three pillars, and it was entwined into the tree. So the identity is quite like a direct reflection of what the state stands for. Yeah.
So your choice of colors also then comes from that research.
So we didn't have. So another thing, what we did was we didn't have one single color for the Bihar logo, the Bihar Museum logo. So there are multiple colors, and because again, the reason why we have the plurality attached to the identity, and it has multiple stories, is because Bihar is not one single story. Right. It is the entire. It's many stories, and it's like when you connect the dots, then you get a sense of what Bihar is about. In isolation, not one thing makes the story, or not. It's not in isolation. That's why it has got the tree, which where the story begins with. It's also the tree of life. It's about Buddhism, which emerged out of this region. The triad tree, it has got a story of good governance, knowledge, and spiritual awakening, which the three things which made it the perfect society, right? The script, all those things. And I said the museum is not in a hurry to tell a story, because it'll keep telling you a story, and it'll keep telling you one story after the other, and because it is going to now last its own, chalk out another history for itself in that context, right? So thereby, unlike traditional identities, which one single identity or one single story embeds in that identity, for reasons which are optimizing in terms of how do you tell your story in 1 second, right? Or instantly, or this particular institution doesn't require something like that. Yeah.
So multiple colors, do they mean something like, if it's on a website it's a different color, or if it's on a mobile, or
it is, so the identity is being applied. Yeah, so it's never on a plain piece of paper, which it is on a plain piece of paper, like a letterhead or a visiting card, right? But in most cases, if you see the visual collateral, it is on an image or on a background, right? So it needs to stand out on that background. Now, within there, basically, of course, you have the high contrast black and white colors, which you can use for most effective usage. But you could also use the other colors, and the multiplicity of colors, which is not too much. I don't remember the exact number. Is again to talk about a diversity of itself, right? It's vast.
So, when you enter the Bihar Museum, outside it's on stainless steel, right?
Yes.
So you chose that? I was always very curious to know.
Why stainless steel?
Why stainless steel? Why is that colorless, if I might use
that
word?
So again, basically it's the cotton steel wall, which is there right outside, on the boundary wall. So which is a dark color, and stainless steel would look very good on it. So it's almost represents white in that sense. And stainless steel as a material basically goes nowhere. It will stay the way it is. You just need to clean it every day. It's a very hard material. You can very easily engineer letters out of it. Low maintenance. And it works very well. Yeah, it's looking beautiful.
It's beautiful. Every other person goes and uses that as a backdrop for taking a selfie or group photographs and all.
Yeah, we didn't think of it as a selfie wall, but
you could add.
And now we are more conscious about it.
Yeah, you could add that as a success story, part of the Bihar Museum branding.
Because people always need, and especially the concept of selfie is about did you make the image the witness of your experience, right?
Exactly.
And your experience. That's why you put your face inside and you put your object or what you're experiencing inside it. And I think it does a good job. And I think, again, a museum would do that in multiple places, in many, many places. So I remember you posted one image of your students, somebody going to the Miran, and they were sitting on the throne, right? So that's another selfie moment in context to, putting themselves into the story.
No, but we designed it like that. I'm actually going to write a blog. So the idea was that Chandragupta Maurya does not become the emperor because of the rule of primogeniture. He does not come from a warrior community, or his father was the king. That's why he doesn't become the king. So you win those touchscreen games. You log in with your name, and if you win the game, then you get to be the king. Of course, it's taken in a different context. We had sort of visualized it. But sometimes, the scope of your project doesn't allow you at that particular moment to see the different dimensions that people would make out of it. I think that's very fascinating and exciting.
Yes.
So tell us something which did not go well, or how you had planned, or something that...
did not go well. So I think... it's not easy to work with the bureaucracy, in context to getting things moving forward. And we were very determined, because we were given very tight deadlines, and we were determined to finish the project in time. And there was the inauguration happening and all those things. So we were moving at full speed, right? And we were very lucky to have Anjani ji at all our main meetings. And so everything went off fantastically well. First time right. Because we really worked hard on doing our homework very well. But subsequently, when we wanted to move things forward, it would slow down, quite a bit. And because we were highly determined, I mean, that's the way we are as a studio, that we go out and get our work done. So we would be almost parking ourselves out there and moving files, as we put it, right? And so those were the tough parts. But I don't think they are something which I regret, because I think unless we, as people, designers, get off from our high horses and get the work done, it's not going to get done. And we'll only have a sorry story to tell at the end of the day. So we have to go out and get our work done. And there will be challenges of very kind. That doesn't mean that we don't have challenges in the corporate world or some other world which we operate in. There are challenges everywhere. There are different types of challenges. Some are very tough to do, and like this was tough to do, But the fact that we got this far is great, and great for everybody, because I think you make it happen, and when it happens, then it's for everybody to bear the fruit and enjoy it, right? In that sense. There's Akansha is asking a question regarding Maki and the contradiction. We should address it. I'm not the right person to address a question like this.
It would have been better, I think, if somebody representing Maki or Opolis was on the panel. There had people
but I just
who had registered.
But I could answer from my perspective in context to what the intent of the client was, right? So from what I understand is they wanted to make a world-class museum, right? And they wanted to get the best in the world from an architectural perspective to create such an institution from an architectural perspective. And so while one sees a contradiction in getting a Japanese architect, it also basically could, and in my case, in my eyes, basically, would allow me to look at the same history in a different perspective, right? Rather than in the stereotypical perspective, which could have come if somebody would have done it the way it would have been a flow in context to how an Indian architect would do it. Indian architecture from an Indian style of architecture would be. But having said that, I mean, that's something which happened, and I was no part of it in any perspective. So, but it's like also in life, like people like me, I'm talking about myself, I always try and see that if something is already set, then you can't undo it. So might as well see the positive side of it and see how you can create a construct out of it rather than deconstruct it and come out with a negative attitude towards it. So I see it as a fantastic building. It's very contemporary, very modern. So it's got this flip side of it. Therefore, we say basically it's a portal, which takes you from the past to the future. So that's where I see positivity in the outcome of hiring, say, somebody like Maki. It was an international competition. I think it has got 8 or 9 top architects of the world, including Frank Gehry, and I think really big names were there.
Foster
and it was a tough choice. Yeah, Foster also was there. Yeah, I think it was a tough choice which they had to make, and I think they took the call.
So that actually brings us to a very different part of designing in a government sector in India. So all the state governments have different laws when it comes to selection of a design firm. I'm just, of course, restricting myself to museums and cultural institutions. The central government has a different set of laws, So how do you, as a design studio, what is your advice? There are quite a few young designers and design students today. What do you tell them, right? How does one approach? Are these the BOQs and the tender documents that you have to go through and read through, and do they, sort of hamper your design process?
No, firstly, I think you need to be a studio of a certain size to be able to tackle a project like this. It's a big project. Okay, that's one thing. You need to have X amount of experience. That doesn't mean if you don't have experience, you can't get in, but the chances go low because you need to have a portfolio, you need to have number of people, etc. And like in our case, we brought in 3 partners to come in, because we realized, although we could do everything, we realized that if we had to do it in that given time, we couldn't do it with the team which we had, right? Because most of us in the studio are ambidextrous in terms of we would do multiple tasks. So we I think we took a very good decision of bringing in partners to manage this thing in that manner. But largely the aspect of filling tenders, and this is a tender document, an RFP document which you had to fill, which had to have lots of requirements in context to, say, a state of Bihar would have a certain style of filling tender documents. And it was very, very tough and very tedious and very time consuming. There are certain firms which are experts in doing this or bring in experts to do this. You still need to fill them up. And then they would be uploading issues, and then it wouldn't get uploaded. And then deadline is running away. Then you're taking the flight to Patna and then physically giving it, things like that, right? So very, very challenging. And normally, I think here in this case, I think Lord Cultural Resources did a fantastic job of advising the government and the authorities in terms of giving percentage marks, right? In terms of weightages. It's called weightages. So 70, 20, 30 was a weightage in context to your financial weightage versus your, so-called, what's the other weightage called? The
technical.
Yeah, your qualifying technical bid, and financial. Technical bid, yeah. I think that's where the L1 basically. So L1 is your lowest bid. Most of the contracts, the lowest bid party would get it, right? And I think in that case we would not have got it, out of question. And I think so we qualified very well. We made a very good presentation when we were called as shortlisted parties, and that's what impressed them, and I think we scored very high on that. And we had a decent fee.
Yes, it was not a very grand fee in terms of the quantum of work that was assigned. But also, Anthony, our session is about to expire in another 8 minutes, but we would also like you to talk about when it comes to budgeting. It is very important if you are a young designer starting out or a young design student to know. I emphasis on the word young because, life is not very rosy, but that does not mean that it is not something you should be a part of. Government projects reach out to large people, but in terms of budgeting, the money, what you think is the X amount of money for this phase of work, that check will not reach you in time. It takes months. So how does one, as a Lopez design firm, do you budget, do you keep a 6 month or 1 year, and how do you plan for such big projects?
No, so as far as Bihar Museum, Bihar Museum, we went haywire as far as money management was concerned, purely because we didn't expect delays in payments, and there were delays, but because a firm of our size, we do multiple projects, and we were doing, for a certain period, we were doing only Bihar Museum because of the scale it was, at. But very soon we realized that we should mitigate our risk as far as money was concerned. So that's one thing. Also, basically, we make sure that the effort which we put in gets paid for from a man-hour cost, right? There are two costs largely. Is basically a man-hour cost in terms of what it would cost you to deliver a project, and then you would say then other costs are added in every perspective, and there's an intellectual cost, right? The value which you bring, and as a designer, if you think that you can bring in tremendous value, then that's the price you put on top of it, right? So that's why designer A, B, C, they have astronomical figures. But you don't require that to survive as a person, right? But that's the IP which you bring onto the table, a unique, uniqueness of the value which you bring. So every artist has that, every designer has that in them. And it's your ability to charge that price which will make the difference. So that's the two things, charging, and then again, taking into consideration delays and all those things. And also being competitive at the other end, right? So if you charge, say, 1,000 rupees and somebody is charging at 10 rupees and you're equally competent, he will get the job. He or she will get the job, and they will definitely get the job. So how do you be competitive in an environment where everything given same, you stand a chance? So that's the magic which you got to work at. And you learn it by making mistakes, because the industry does not operate on formulas as far as charging is concerned. There are a lot of verticals in the world which have a standard rate, right? And they operate that way, and they're very comfortable operating that way. But in the design field, it's always a challenge. How much should I charge? This is a big question. Young people always have this big dilemma. How much should I charge? And I would say that if you're very young and just starting out, then I should build a portfolio. Don't worry about the money. Somehow survive. But make sure that you're not disrespected. That's the other thing, that you would quote, say, 1,000 rupees, and the client would say, will you do it for 5 rupees? 1,000 rupees, 5 rupees. And that's the time you got to check whether this guy is actually jipping me, or, and disrespecting me and my profession and my creativity and my effort. You should not take it, even if it's for a portfolio, right? So it needs to be something which that the client is coming from somewhere, he just cannot afford to you, or this is what he's offering you. It's respectable, it's okay. You earn your dal chawal, and you do a good job, and you create a portfolio, and you slowly build your reputation. And reputation will deliver a good price for you in return. And of course, you got to be a thorough professional. You got to do everything professionally. You got to be very knowledgeable about your subject, so that the client feels confident that they have spent the money in the right direction, the right person. I think that's very important. In your first presentation is very critical. So client will ask you all the questions. They will make sure that, okay, the portfolio looks good, but they are very nervous because they've paid you that advance. And they're praying to their gods that I hope the designer turns out to be great and creates a fantastic identity for you, right? So your first presentation is when they feel, hey, we have spent the money in the right direction, the right person. And that's very important that you work. And your first presentation, typically not the logo, it's a strategy, or it's an understanding of the subject, or it's an articulation. But that's what we do. And that's where you feel, hey, this person has understood us very well. And in fact, they're telling our story the way we've never told our own story, right? And when that happens, then the client starts putting 100% trust in you. And also they know that the money well spent, even before they got the final product. Yeah. And that happens so with people who can deliver. And I think it's something which you need to learn. That art is never taught. So you got to be good in your craft, but you got to be good in many other things also.
Deepanshu, anything to add, to ask? We have exactly 2 minutes, 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you, Susie, for adding some notes as we speak, or to the questions.
So, something that I would like to ask here, that branding, you as a studio, you did the branding for them. So what here becomes the responsibility of the client in terms of, ensuring the longevity of the work that you did for them, and how to make it self-sustaining, so that the original objective, of creating that stays relevant once, the designer takes a back foot on it.
How many seconds do we have left?
1.5 minutes.
1 minute 53. Okay. Yeah. So what a designer does is basically he creates a system. He or she creates a system, right? A system which the client can take and implement forever, hopefully forever, till time change and you require a new system. Or new technologies would require new systems in place. And once you do that, typically, unless you have a next contract with them, which is more hand-holding and things like that, your job is over and you're hoping for the best. So that's it. So client is under no compulsion. He can take your work and then put it in the dustbin or the shredder right away after that. After he has paid you, mind you. And but the whole purpose the client does it is for the very purpose they've hired you, right? They want this to build as a brand. And for an institution like Bihar Museum, I think it's a very tough thing, and Anjani ji would support me on that. Also, that the amount of hard work you got to put in to deliver. So if we worked very hard, suppose, quote unquote, very hard, right? the museum has to work equally hard to deliver it on a daily basis. Very tough, right? So you need people at every level delivering it for you, right? And I was telling somebody, I remember talking to Chanchal ji in our bid meeting, where we made a graph where it talked about big circles, and it talked about the museum experience in between. That was narrow. I said, this is your real museum experience. You got to create a virtual experience outside that, which goes in the mind of people. And then, but you need to have a budget for that. And I said, the budget which you need, that is the same budget which you spent in building the museum, right? That's a massive budget, right? So now budget does not mean that you spend it out into build reputation, build a story. And I think that's where the effort, it cannot be purely administrative staff just passing envelopes and doing things like that. So successful institutions have got people working relentlessly towards creating a brand, right? So of course you need to have a great product, without which you cannot create success. But once you have a great product, then you got to work very hard to build that success.
So
and different institutions will have to do it differently. Yeah.
So do you advise museums to have in-house branding team or a social media team? I mean, I know museums outside India, the big museums, they do have such teams. Do you think it is advisable for museums in India to do that, or do you think, especially for the outreach, branding, identity, those kind of work that continues, it doesn't stop, right? They can have a contract with a design firm. Do you think these are?
Yeah, all these things are possible. I don't think there is one answer to any particular ask in that sense. So it depends on what institution it is, what type of communication is required, what's the frequency of communication, all those things. And then where it makes good sense to have it in-house or out-house. And today, basically, I think the amount of levels or mediums you need to communicate it, it's impossible to have an expert team in time, unless you're a very large institution with large requirements, right? So you would bring in like social media, right? Or digital, or and things like that. And the frequency is so fast, and so frequent. So it's almost 2-3 posts a day. Can you do that, right? So it would be tough to do that in-house in that context. And plus, again, you require a lot of expertise from a medium specific or a channel specific, activities concerned. Then you may have a lot of programming to do as far as events which you create, right? So that can be done in-house, definitely, right? But once you set a program in place, all the communication around it, etc. Again, so most museums work on a 6-year plan or a 7-year plan, right? That early, big ones, right? And they would drive everything and put budgets in place, and things like that. And a lot of the big ones do a very good job of it. And they bring it very high success rate. And they are mainly concerned about impacts they produce, right? For every event they produce, they're just looking at what numbers, what impacts, what type of people. So they really study very hard. So that component, they do it in-house, of studying the impact, what type of people came in, what type of feedback they're getting. So they really work hard on that. Because there's a huge competition on a global level. There's a lot of competition among museums, and they really fight for it.
Yeah, museum projects.
And I think museums in India needs to become that competitive. We are, compared to anything abroad, we are very laxidal compared to them. It's happening.
Yeah, it's happening very slow. You probably have more.
It has to happen fast.
More of the private galleries or museums where people know, like something we've been told many times, that when we by people, by friends, when I teach or somewhere, we get told that when we travel abroad, we always add a museum visit to our itinerary. We have so much in India. Why don't we do that? It's probably because what you mentioned in the earlier session is that we haven't put ourselves out there. We think we have a fantastic museum. We have a fantastic collection, which we do. All museums in India have this fantastic collection. And we expect the visitor to seek us out. Instead of us going there, telling visitors, we are so and so, like I am the Bihar Museum, like you said, I am a part of you, you're a part of me. We are in it together instead of being this edifice. If you have anyone here, any of the people who are listening to this, do look up some of the museum websites we have in India, and you will come to know what we are talking about. And during the lockdown, like they did a big research, the UI UX team for Museum Memories Project, and figured that there were few museums who were doing these, the stories on Instagram, and they had a profile on Instagram, and they were having quizzes and puzzles, but they were again more of the younger museums or private museums or galleries. But I don't want to take names, but none of the ones which actually have the real hardcore collections from India. They just
that's the other thing about also about government and state government and national government institutions, which are very laid back comparatively speaking, compared to a private institution which clearly knows that it wants to do its job right. So they will hire the right people, they will take them to task and push them to deliver, and things like that, because they are investing money and they want the returns of their money. And private museums are people who are normally people, they come from either wealth or they come from people who have created wealth for themselves, right? And they know the value of money.
Yeah,
and they know the value of whatever they have or that they own, right? In terms of private,
which is something I remember. Lord Cultural Resources had pushed Bihar government to make Bihar Museum a registered society, so that their hiring system can be different. The flexibility of working with different organizations for their outreach, for the exhibitions, and then call be more flexible.
Yeah, but I think they're still very challenged.
Yeah. Definitely.
They're still very challenged. The challenge by the geography is one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah,
Patna,
that's true.
Who would want to come and work in Patna and be in Patna, and then other challenges of working with the system and things like that. So still, I think in spite of doing that, it is not given it the advantage it should have had. Yeah.
So thank you, Anthony. 3 sessions on Zoom. This is interesting.
Yeah.
I think we could continue discussing if hopefully we, Diptangshu and Ashwini and, could meet you, and we could meet the actual bigger team of interns that we had working on the project. And thank you so much for taking out so much time for us. And thank you, Diptangshu.
My pleasure. Dipanshu, you could, we could interact with your students, because I think there are a lot of questions young people have. And I think it's important to address them. But I think questions are not about finding answers, but for you to find your own answer, right? So because there is no one way of doing anything, and definitely there are no formulas in at least in my world. But having conversations and talking to people who have gone through journeys like this, so we have gone through many journeys like this, helps.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a lovely evening.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
You.
Bye.
Wonderful. Bye.
Bye.